your interview. Well, we'll give one more minute. Please feel free, folks, to eat your lunch if you've brought it. A lot of people not eating today. Just like a fasting day. So excited. We are really thrilled to be here to have three incredible biologists with us who are doing work on the ground to save the species in the places that make California great and very special. I think everyone in here knows that it's California Biodiversity Day, and that in California we don't do things just one day, we're celebrating all week long. So this is a part of a series of events. I think we'll hear about some of the other events that have already happened and a couple that are coming up. But before we get started on that, I actually wanted to turn it over to Kim to tell us a little bit about California Biodiversity Day and kick us off.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks everyone for being here today. So yes, if you don't know what California Biodiversity Day is, it's technically September 7th of every year. It was designated by Governor Brown back in 2018, so this is actually the 7th celebration of California Biodiversity Day. And basically it's just a time for folks to come together and celebrate the incredible biodiversity that we have in our state, while also learning about actions to protect and steward it. So, like Megan said, there are events all this week. Katrina hosted one last night at Casumnes. I hosted one at Camp Pollock on Saturday. And there are at least like 18 other events within the SAC region happening this week. So I encourage you to check out the California Biodiversity Day website, which you can find by scanning the QR code here, or whenever it shows up on the screen. There will be a map. There are over 200, I think we're at like over 230 events across the state now. And many of them are free, but if they're not, there'll be information about any costs associated with them. So I encourage you to check that out. Also, for a really easy way that you can participate in California Biodiversity Day from anywhere in California, I recommend that you join our Find 30 Species project on iNaturalist. iNaturalist, if you've never used it before, it's a smartphone app that is really awesome for just kind of figuring out what the heck am I looking at when I'm out in nature. You can take photos and submit audio recordings, and the app will actually help you identify what you saw, what you heard. Dena will be giving a demo of the app at the end of the panel, so stick around for that. If you don't already have the app downloaded, have QR codes here, and then this is a QR code to join the actual Find 30 Species project. And that's it. Thanks for coming today.
Kim, thanks so much for your leadership of Biodiversity Day. We really appreciate it. So I didn't introduce myself. My name's Meghan Hertel. I'm Deputy Secretary for Biodiversity and Habitat here at CNRA. And with Madeline and many other folks get to work on 30 by 30, so the effort to conserve 30% of our lands and coastal waters by 2030. But all of that is really to support the work that is happening on the ground. And I'm super excited. We came up with a tagline when we were talking a little bit earlier. So what did you want to call the panel?
Bats, bears, and fish, oh my.
Yeah, perfect way. I also want to point out that I'm the only one not wearing any animal-themed clothing or jewelry right now, and I'm feeling very self-conscious about that. But I appreciate that you all stepped out with the amazing shirts and the amazing jewelry. So this is going to be a great discussion. The plan is we're going to have each of you talk a little bit about your role. We really want to know what it's like a day in your life. What is it like out on the ground? What do you love? What's your challenges? What excites you about the job? We're then going to save plenty of time for a Q&A from all of you, so come up with your best challenging species-specific questions, or easy ones. You looked very nervous when I said that. And then we're going to wrap up with Dena showing us iNaturalist. I will say I used iNaturalist in my backyard this weekend. There was a big yellow bee, and I was like, wow, that looks like a carpenter bee, but it's bright yellow. It was totally a carpenter bee. But iNaturalist let me know that that was the male carpenter bee, and the black ones are actually the female. So it works even when insects are moving around. So hang out for that demonstration. And then we'll wrap up with a raffle. So you're going to want to stay, because there's some good raffle items up here. All right. So with that, Theo, why don't you kick us off? Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your role and what a day in your life is like.
Good afternoon. My name is Theo Clare. I'm very happy to be with you all today to talk a little bit about my work. And nice to see some familiar faces in the crowd as well. I'm an environmental scientist with the Department of Water Resources Riverine Stewardship Program, and my background is broadly in political ecology and restoration ecology. The Riverine Stewardship Program aims to protect, enhance, and restore the riparian ecosystems of California statewide. This includes supporting fish passage improvements, funding community-based urban stream restoration, and partnering with local agencies and organizations to implement critical projects to improve riparian habitat and reduce risks of flood and erosion. California has lost over 95% of its wetland and riparian habitat, and dams without fish passage mean that almost 90% of California's cold water and headwater habitat is inaccessible to migratory fish like salmon and lamprey. This has had a devastating impact on our biodiversity across the state, and our freshwater species are really struggling. I think many of us have likely heard or seen statistics that up to 75% of California's native and endemic freshwater species are at high risk of becoming endangered or extinct within the next 75 years as climate change predictions become increasingly able to predict impacts to water temperature and water use. One of the projects that I get to work on that is most dear to me is the reintroduction of winter-run Chinook salmon to the McCloud River, which means that folks in my crew are living up in Redding 1 or 2 weeks out of the month during our field season, getting to work really closely with the Winnemem-Wintu tribe and other partner agencies and academics to assess the feasibility of above-dam reintroduction. This project is of special importance to the Winnemem-Wintu tribe, who consider salmon part of their family. And Chief Sisk will often tell you, if you speak to her, that what happens to the salmon happens to the people too. When I hear her say this, I am often first struck by the deep grief of what is happening to our freshwater and riparian systems. I have a lot of fear about our shared future living in California, caring about our living world. But Chief's words are also a reminder about what can happen when we share vision and purpose and come together in communities to help restore and care for our degraded stream systems. Our communities can thrive when we make our rivers and streams healthy again, and I've gotten to see communities really come alive around river restoration projects through working with the Riverine Stewardship Program. I'm so proud to work with RSP, which has a number of programs within the branch, including the Urban Streams Restoration Program, which has been connecting dispossessed and marginalized communities with funds and technical assistance to implement community-based stream restoration projects since the 80s. The Statewide Restoration Initiatives branch facilitates the acquisition and restoration of critical habitat so that it can be protected in perpetuity and continue providing ecological benefits regardless of other development. The California Fish Passage Forum coordinates with RSP, and this forum supports the coordination and coordinated efforts to remove passage barriers to fish movement and anadromy across the state, bringing all kinds of agencies and community organizations together to maximize our impact and bring fish back to waters where they haven't been able to access good habitat. The kind of work that the Riverine Stewardship Program does not only contributes to initiatives like 30 by 30 or the governor's salmon strategy, but they also bring our communities together in meaningful work and offer a path to a future in which all California residents, human and non-human, can flourish together.
Thank you, Theo. That sounds awesome. Theo, before we move on, it has to be amazing to do work with some of our Indigenous partners, and we have so much we need to learn and so much we need to repair and damage that we've done over the last 175 years. We're about to have our 175th birthday tonight. Just one quick question before we move on. Why do you think it's so important that we work within communities and with Indigenous partners on biodiversity particularly?
I think many people in the room may have heard the statistic that globally, although Indigenous communities make up less than 1% of the human population, lands stewarded by Indigenous communities hold over 90% of the world's biodiversity. Before contact and colonization, California had one of the most biodiverse land areas in the world. We have so many different microhabitats and incredible richness and abundance. California was very much a garden. We also have the greatest Indigenous language diversity per area of anywhere in the North Americas. And the impacts that our water development and agriculture and logging and mining In 2019, when Governor Newsom issued a formal apology for the California genocide, he promised a truth and reconciliation process and a forum for Indigenous leaders to come together. And part of that work really has been the emphasis on salmon restoration and salmon strategy. Many of California's Indigenous communities, right, as I said before, consider salmon literally kin, relations, part of their family. And so salmon extinction really poses an existential threat to people's cultures and lifeways. And so when we partner with Indigenous communities, there's both the element of like moral righteousness or justice or equity in working with a community to restore something that is a critical piece of cultural living and embodied lifeways, and also traditional ecological knowledge when brought into conversation with Western paradigms of restoration science can really generate not only new methodologies, but effective methodologies. We see like on the Klamath Dam removals, in which Indigenous communities have been advocating for decades to remove those dams and have worked very closely with the collaborative group of agencies and organizations, the Klamath River Renewal Corporation, that it worked. Fish are already back above dam sites spawning.
And way faster than we thought.
Way faster
we
than Western science thought it was going to happen.
And it was like
a month.
months.
Yeah, that
Pretty
salmon
amazing.
were spawning. And so we also see that these partnerships are ecologically very, very effective and empower communities in a way that has really serious implications for things like diabetes or drug abuse or early death, that those things really go down in impacted communities when those communities are brought into restoration practice. So it's a win-win across the board.
That's amazing. And favorite fish?
I'm actually very partial to green sturgeon. I do a lot of my work with intervention salmon, which I'm also very
We won't
passionate
tell
about.
the salmon you said
Please
that.
don't.
And size of green salmon? Can you, yeah.
Big,
Sturgeon, sorry.
beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah, incredible.
Have you
fish.
actually held one?
Yes, I used to work with the green sturgeon at UC Davis.
Very cool.
But I've never seen one in the wild and hope to someday.
Life lister.
Definitely.
All right, okay, so we're gonna move on to Sarinah. There are some incredible photos happening behind us. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit what a day in your life is like.
I cannot see what's happening behind me, but my name is Sarinah Simons. I work over in the Sierra District for California State Parks. So that's all the way at the top of our district, Plumas Eureka State Park, all the way down to Mono Lake. So it's a really big area that I focus on, but I just wanted to ask how many of you guys have ever been to Tahoe? All right, pretty much everybody here.
Okay, like the two people that haven't, you have gotta go to Tahoe. Two people that did not.
And then of the folks that have been to Tahoe, how many of you guys have ever seen a bear while you're there? Pretty much everybody, yeah. So if you'd asked, the group 50 years ago, have you seen a bear while you're in Tahoe? Nobody would have raised their hand. It would have been a really rare, amazing sight to see a bear in Tahoe. But now we are dealing with, not, threat of extinction by any means. We're actually dealing with an overpopulation of bears in the Tahoe Basin. And you can kind of imagine, Tahoe, the shape of Tahoe, that bean shape, just kind of along just like the edge of it is where we see like the highest density, I would say probably one of the largest densities in the United States of bears, just right here in Lake Tahoe. So, my role as a bear specialist, for better or for worse, is mostly dealing with people. So that's anywhere from, there's a bear eating my picnic, somebody help. Okay, let's go run and scare the bears away. And then educating folks or yelling at people for taking photos of bears or, trying to feed bears. Working in the campgrounds, trying to do a lot of education. We have an interagency group with Fish and Wildlife, Nevada Department of Wildlife, Forest Service, Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and so we're an interagency group called the Tahoe Interagency Bear Team. We try to partner with, cohesive messaging. We're trying to influence policy. So we're doing a lot of big picture stuff, but on the ground, working with bears is really awesome. When I get to do, those sort of biannual trap tag haze program where we're actually putting ear tags and collars on bears. We're getting all kinds of great data on relatability and health too. So we can kind of see like recidivism too. So you have a sow who grew up underneath the house in South Lake Tahoe. Her cubs will go straight to the same spot, and then it's like a generational, passed on generational knowledge that we are really trying to disrupt. Because on the biodiversity side, when we have bears concentrated in these high human areas, high visitation, they're not out in the woods doing all of the great processes that they naturally would. And so we have weird events like we had like a crazy wasp year once, and people were like, why was that? There's just like things going on in the ecosystem that we're not really sure what's going on, but it is disrupted. And so, we're trying to see how bears move across the basin and how we can, get in there so that we can kind of rewild the population up there. And then, let folks know that, seeing a bear on the side of the road eating garbage, like if you've never seen a bear, that's really exciting. But the better way to see a bear would be, out on your hike or out in the woods, and rarely, So that's kind of a lot of the work that I do. But then I also do filmmaking for the state, and so I've done a couple of really cool projects with Big Basin Redwood State Park. Dena and I are working on a snowy plover project right now. We've done osprey banding at Mono Lake, so just kind of trying to tell the stories, all the great work that you guys do. I feel like we're not great at showcasing the awesome work that we do, and so that's kind of my hope, is that we can share those stories and really highlight what's going on within state parks, but also just, as natural resource agencies. So
Incredible. And if you get a chance, please do Google the films that she's making. They're really touching and beautiful. One question I have for you is, with so many people in Tahoe and more coming to visit Tahoe, I've heard some crazy statistics for like every few degrees it gets warmer in the valley, exponentially more people drive up to Tahoe to get out of it. Like, what do you tell people if they are to run into a bear, other than don't take a selfie with it?
Yeah, that's
What's your advice?
that's the first one. If we have a warm day down here in Sac, 9 times out of 10 we're gonna have a lot of people up in Tahoe. But I guess it just depends on what you're up there to do. If you're there to recreate for the day, park at the day use area or the campground, or if you're there to camp, if you're there at Airbnb, I think getting yourself ready to enter bear country is important, and that comes with a lot of responsibility, whether it is like not leaving food, trash, anything scented in your vehicle. Down here in Sacramento, you guys have to kind of worry about, people breaking into your car, if you leave your laptop there, something to entice somebody. We have the same thing, but they're bears, So they will case neighborhoods, they know how to open doors, they will check the path of least resistance for them, but if they really want something, they're gonna go and get it too. So, just kind of come armed with knowledge and kind of know how to navigate Tahoe before you come up here.
And you've been using social media and other avenues to try to better educate people, right? I think I saw you on the Bare Naked Truth blog. Great name for a blog from CFW. How important do you think it is to use different communication channels to reach the general public? Like, we all know bears, right? We love them, we do this for work. But that's not everybody who's up in Tahoe.
Yeah, I think social media and the news media is so important. Through our interagency group, we actually had a proactive media meeting where we invited folks from the media, SF Gate, Reno, Tahoe Daily Tribune, up to kind of meet with us and say, hey, here's where we're noticing, maybe you're sensationalizing stories, you're feeding into these narratives that are not really helpful. I don't know if you guys all saw the ice cream bear in South Lake Tahoe. I had some words to say about that one. We don't want to perpetuate this idea that bears are fun, fuzzy mascots. We want to make people realize that they are wild animals that are unpredictable, strong, intelligent, all those great things about them, but that they're not, we shouldn't be naming them, we shouldn't be, just sort of putting our human emotions on them. Bears have their own language, their own, sets of just existing in the world, and we can't even comprehend what that is like. And so I think, just out of respect, I think it's important for us to you know, have those boundaries and talk to folks and really kind of explain each situation as it unfolds.
Well, it's interesting because you're trying to make bears less cute. And Katrina, I feel like you're trying to make bats cuter. Just so everyone knows, Katrina did a bat event last night at Kasumna, so thank you for being here because I'm sure you're tired after having been up in the evening hosting a bunch of people. But tell us a little bit about your role and what you do.
Yeah, my name's Katrina Smith, and I'm a statewide coordinator for small mammal conservation for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So that means I work at the headquarters office. I have a statewide perspective. There are hundreds of small mammal species, bats, rodents, lagomorphs like rabbits and pika, shrews and moles, so many species of mammal at risk and in need and worthy of celebration in California. My job is to, from a statewide perspective, coordinate the biggest priority, highest priority conservation actions where we can make the most gain in either learning about those species, filling knowledge gaps, making partnerships, finding funding, supporting our biodiverse mammals in the state to improve our knowledge, and to improve our management, and to share with the public how important they are and hopefully improve people's value of them. So that is sometimes an overwhelming task, I'll be honest. We have a group of small taxa experts, and I wish there were 10 of me, of course, but it's such an exciting job. I'm never bored. The opportunities are endless, and so that's really great. And I have technical expertise as a bat biologist, so I tend to spend a lot of my focus. It's just easiest for me to work on those projects because I can speak about bats and I know a lot of their natural history and I have a lot of partnerships there already. So a lot of my work right now is focused on addressing two big threats to bats, which are white nose syndrome, a fungal disease that affects hibernating bats, and wind energy. The operation of turbines kills bats in the summertime, specifically migrating bats, and that's kind of a newer threat. So we're working on both of those things simultaneously. I also work a lot with Mojave ground squirrel. It's a threatened species in the desert that is difficult to find. So there's a pattern in my work. Things that are difficult to study. Not many people know about them.
We should dig into that.
Questions from left field. There's a lot of human-wildlife conflict. I am also one of the people who gets called when someone finds a random mammal that needs a home or needs a question answered. So yes, all things sort of as the point of contact for CDFW for questions. I redirect a lot of questions to our regional staff also. So I'm in the headquarters office, but our regional staff do a lot of mammal conservation as well. So getting to know them and relaying questions to Tahoe, for example, or to Northern California, or to the desert, I do a lot of that as well. So
very cool.
Professional networker now.
For bats.
For bats. Another bats.
Yeah. Like, what are a couple facts that you wish the general public knew about bats?
Oh, I mean, I think the biggest topic that comes up when you start to talk about bats, and people do or do not love bats, is the risk of rabies. So rabies is a disease, a virus that can infect humans. Bats do carry it. It's important to understand the risk because it is risky to humans. But the only way you can contract rabies is by touching a bat or having contact with the saliva. If their saliva or bodily fluids connect with your bodily fluids, then there's a problem. But if you're not touching each other, if we're just observing each other from afar, giving each other space, respecting our boundaries, there is very little risk of you contracting rabies. And there's a vaccine that you can receive before or after that is 100% effective in reducing the risk of any human's transmission of that virus. So I think just acknowledging the scariness of bats is an important thing for us to do, because they also fly at night, and they echolocate, they make sounds above our human hearing. So as a sensory experience, it's really hard to perceive them. So that makes them really scary because you can't hear or see them until sometimes they're right in front of your face. And they do have this, they're good flyers. So they can turn on a dime. Some of them have this butterfly flight pattern. Some of them like cruise at crazy high speeds. So that feels really unpredictable to us. So I think just addressing those scary components of bats is something that we do a lot of and that I think is really important. And showing how cute they are, because they are so cute. Yes, and in recent years we've been able to get really good photography of bats with new technology that was previously previously just hard to see them and see what they look like unless they're dead in a museum specimen, which doesn't look that, it's different vibe. So we're focusing a lot on just getting these really great images of their like little whisker hairs or their crazy lion's manes or their like fuzzy, they have these little leaf noses, and just like really being able to visually see them, I think definitely changed the game for me.
Yeah.
Seeing them up close for the first time, like, oh, this is it's a mammal, it's an animal, it has eyeballs, it's not just a scary flying thing that I can't really like get in touch with or expect, so.
I love talking to people that are passionate about different species group because it really comes through, and then it helps me see why we should love those animals. If you haven't done the bat tour or one of Katrina's tours, it's really incredible to go out with an expert in the field and see it. So I want to open it up for questions. Does anyone have any questions you want to ask of these folks? If not, I have other ones, but I want to see who's got burning questions out there.
Question for you, though. I'm so sorry, I'm terrible with names, but I'm
Sarinah.
curious. Are there any projects you're looking forward to making films about in the future that you're starting to work on now that you want to work on?
Yeah, one that we're really excited about is a name returning project. So in Tahoe at Sugar Pine Point State Park, there's a creek that we're saying formerly known as General Creek. Our cultural specialist did all kinds of deep dives into like, where did that name come from? And it's this white guy who made it up, And so we've been working with the Washoe tribe. The actual name of that creek is Dukme'emwata. And so we are working on this project to return that name to that creek. And so there's all kinds of name returning projects happening across the state. This is just one of them, but I think it's really exciting because as we kind of are navigating this administration, names are really important. Contextualizing history is really important. So I think it's more important than ever, now. And so I'm really excited about that one. We're working with the tribe, we're interviewing elders, just kind of keeping that living cultural history alive. And then with Dena, we're working on the Snowy Plover project. We're doing these really awesome training videos for our staff, from maintenance, from rangers, from just to kind of get everybody on board with, not only the presence of snowy plovers, but also how to interact with them and navigate them and respect them and, make them sort of part of daily life, working day to day at parks. So, yeah.
Very cute bird.
They're super cute. Yeah.
Other questions from folks? Monda.
I'm curious about the bats and the wind. I wasn't tracking that as an issue, so I'm curious, like, are there people who are working do you know why? Is it just as obvious as like they don't hear or feel the turbines, and are there sort of solutions under review to avoid that conflict moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, I think the tough part about approaching that problem is that we don't have a good baseline of information about the behavior of bats because they're so small and they're nocturnal and they're hard to find. It's been really difficult to study them historically. So we know a ton about bird behavior, other mammal behavior. We don't know a lot about bat behavior. We have a lot of ideas, but it's hard to put that down on paper when you talk about where rubber meets the road and what exactly we need to do. So we are taking an adaptive management approach to both learn more about hoary bat movements. For example, there's the MODIS network provides this really great opportunity for us to track. We've tracked hoary bats from Humboldt down to Baja, up to Nevada, over to Nevada and up to Oregon, and they make these crazy big movements. And so we're starting to gather more information about when they move and where and why, so we can eventually have hopefully a beautiful map of the Pacific flyway for hoary bats, which are the species, the migratory species that is most impacted. So the questions, so there's still a lot of questions about why they're using those spaces, why they might be attracted even to wind turbines. They're very long-lived and very curious animals, so they might be investigating it. It's a new threat. They don't perceive it potentially as a threat to their existence, so they might be checking it out and then getting too close. And then wind turbines, they're huge and they change the wind landscape, so it could be that they're just getting too close and then not powerful enough to fly out of that threatening space. But the thing that we are implementing in the Altamont Pass is curtailment. So you can stop the turbine blades from spinning at low wind speeds when the turbines are making very little power, but they're killing a lot of bats at those lower wind speeds, like below. We use like 6 meters per second. During the months of the year when we see the highest fatalities, when a lot of bats are passing through. So reducing operations and changing the way we operate those turbines during the high-risk periods is the strategy moving forward, and there's lots of nuance there, but with how perfectly you can do that and what is enough and all of those questions that we're trying to answer too. So people ask a lot about acoustic deterrence, like can you make a sound that they don't like so they just won't come nearby? That's just technically challenging because sound attenuates through space, and so we just can't make sound loud enough or loud enough or long enough. That's a challenging space there, but there are, so for now, changing the way the turbines operate is the best strategy, and it works. So luckily we're in California, there's a lot more wind in East and Midwest, so we have learned from other opportunities in other parts of the country and are starting to apply it now in California.
It's a great question because we know we need to address our climate objectives if we're going to protect our biodiversity. And we need to protect our biodiversity so that when we address our climate, we have a healthy ecosystem.
Right.
So, while more people think of questions, I want to hear what is one unusual thing. Like you came home and you were like, man, you will never believe what happened to me today. Do you have an example of something like that? Called up your parents and you're like, Mom, there was this bear in an ice cream shop. Anyone want to start?
I can go first while you're thinking, Theo. So this was probably the scariest moment of my career. We got a call. So I live on the north shore of the lake, and we got a call that there was a cub stuck in a soccer net on someone's property. And so I'm calling CDFW, we're like working together, she's like 2 hours out. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go over there and just sort of see the situation. And so I go over there, there's this little cub who's just completely just strangling himself basically. And his mom is kind of over him, just like really upset, trying to pod him, trying to get him loose. But meanwhile, there's like 3 other bears on the tree, like right next to the whole situation. 1 adult and then 2 cubs at the tippy top. And so I'm just like, what's going on here? And so my thesis with what happened was, this sow and maybe her cubs were kind of going by. 1 got stuck and was doing these alarm calls, and then this other sow with her cub was going by and to check out the situation. Got treed by the original mom, and so now we have like 5, 6 bears at this site.
Like multiple situations.
Multiple situations. So CDFW finally arrives, we have awarded, and our game plan is to scare mom away as best we can, run in, cut this cub loose, and then hopefully everyone will reunite and it's going to be fine.
Also, I like that it's a game plan on a soccer field.
Yeah. So, we make our first attempts to scare mom away, and she is not having it. This is the most, I don't want to say aggressive, but she was so protective. I've never seen, usually mama bears, there's that whole stigma of don't get between a mom or cubs. Black bear sows are usually pretty aloof of what's going on, and they're running first, hoping that kid's following them. And so she was just not having it. We finally got her to move maybe 20 feet. We run in, and it's down in these manzanita bushes, so we can't see what's going on around us. But all the neighbors are, talking and yelling, and then we're cutting, this bear is scratching us, screaming, and then we hear the neighbors go, "She's coming back!" So we're looking around, we don't know where the warden is, we don't know where the sow is. We finally get this guy cut loose and he takes off. It all ended up being fine, the family units reunited, but we still are not 100% sure what that other bear was. It turned out to not be related to anybody, he was just a lone bear, a lone adult bear. And this sow actually had 3 cubs, so all those cubs were hers, and this one little yearling guy just got stuck among everything, the whole situation. So he got caught up. So yeah, by the end of it, the neighbors were like, clapping, but we were just like, oh my God, never again. That was scary.
Amazing. Well, no pressure. Do either of you have one you want to add?
Last year, I talked a little bit about the work on the McCloud River, and so that's a larger multi-agency effort, the reintroduction of winter run Chinook salmon to the McCloud, which has cold water, clear water, good habitat, good juvenile habitat, no fish passage around Shasta Dam, and the water below Shasta is below Keswick really, can get so hot that temperature-dependent mortality for winter run Chinook eggs and juveniles can reach over 75% in drought years.
Oh, wow.
And for a critically endangered species, that's really not acceptable. So the aim of the project is to place fertilized eggs up at the top of the river system.
So you're moving them. You're actually
Yeah, CDFW and the Winnemem-Wintu tribe use a helicopter actually. The roads are too bumpy to drive the eggs, so the eggs get a little lift trip to the top of the river system. And then DWR's part of the project is that we have an in-reservoir trap that we've designed and are testing right at the riverine reservoir interface to try and catch those juveniles before they enter out in the reservoir. And for the most part, catch is pretty steady. We have a peak and then it goes down. In a perfect world, we would be catching a few dozen salmon a day. In reality, it's usually far fewer than that. But there was one day last year, it was a new moon and we had a pulse of rain. So we were pretty optimistic about a good juvenile salmon catch. But when we got to the fish trap, it was full of baby fish, but they were not juvenile salmon. It was over 600 baby bluegill, a kind of sunfish, or warm water sport fish, that must have spawned in the cold McCloud River water and then been flushed out by the first fall rain. And we hadn't thought that bluegill spawned. We thought it was too cold for bluegill to spawn up in the McCloud River, and that even if they had spawned, they would have gone out a little earlier in the season. But we spent all day netting out net after net after net. Are they gone? How can there still be more in this trap? Never ending. So that was eventful. And then we caught 2 bluegill the next day. So 685 one day, 2 the next day. Very clear pulse. It made a lot of our catch data when we were working on working up our figures for our end of season report totally skewed. It really 685 bluegill. So we had to remove that as an outlier for
Every scientist in here was like, oh. That's awesome. Katrina, anyone to add?
Yeah, well, speaking of a lot of animals in one place, the last field day I did for my master's thesis at a place called Lava Beds National Monument. It's on the northern California border, has tons of volcanic caves. I was trying to predict with my magic statistical powers where bats would hibernate because there's so many places that they could choose. And on the last day of our field work, we were so tired and so exhausted, but we did just one more site, and we found this place that was out in the wilderness. The GPS point was bad. Emma and I were, so tired. She found the entrance is this big, so we're sneaking into the entrance, barely touching our toes onto the bottom, finally finding a foothold and getting down into this lava tube that's just at the edge of this cave system. And it's nice and cold down there, and we get all the way down to the bottom, and there's 120 Townsend's figured bats, which is the 5th most important site in the park that was not known before. So, from a science perspective, reduces the confidence interval, makes our population estimate better because now we know most of the really important sites for them in the park. And also just this awesome discovery of I had no idea that they were in here. We've never been here before. We could barely even find it. I'm so tired, but I'm glad we went that day.
So does your job description say entering lava tubes? Is that on?
It used to, yeah.
That is incredible. Well, we are about to switch to the iNaturalist demonstration, but just rapid fire. You set this up by talking about a lot of the challenges biodiversity faces in California. You have to work with the public, which is really challenging. You're working on small mammals, which most people just want to trap and get rid of. What brings you back to this job and makes you excited about this job day after day?
I think it's really deep love of our species and our community members. We are not separate from the animals that live in this world with us. We are also animals. We are all very much sharing one big entangled web of life. And I really believe in a future in which all of California can flourish together, and that is going to take all of us pushing at all angles to protect our remaining lands and the animals and plants that rely on them, because our communities rely on those animals and plants too.
Beautifully said. Oh, that was a piece of it. They said you got very tough.
I think the challenge is the most interesting. At least with bears, you have to be collaborative. It forces you to work with other agencies, with all different kinds of people, and so you just have to be collaborative and have to be a team player. I really like puzzles, and so, you know, bear management is kind of its own puzzle, and in Tahoe specifically, there are a lot of challenging pieces to that puzzle, whether it's advocacy groups that hate everything about us and what we do, you know, to tourists, you know, there's just all these pieces. We've got 2 different states, Nevada, California, we've got all these different towns, so there's just like no rhyme or reason, regulation, so it makes it really challenging, but also that's kind of the fun of it all.
Very cool. Well, you're in the right role. Katrina, you want to wrap us up on that one? What brings you back every day?
Yeah, I think it's the success stories, like the conservation wins, the things that make us happy, because there's a lot of hardness in this role, and I can definitely get stuck in that sometimes, but seeing the wins, seeing 200 people show up to the Cosumnes River Preserve to hang out and talk about bats last night was really awesome. Working with all of you who do really great work and help support us, I think this like human connection and the value of nature, those 2 things together really. It's got to be for passion, because yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's because it matters.
Well, thank you for sharing your passion with us today and a little bit of a window into what the day of your life is. Before we transition to Dena and iNaturalist, let's give a round of applause. I am super jealous of all your jobs. So with this, I'd love to invite Dena to come on up and talk a little bit about iNaturalist. Reminder, if you want to stay for the raffle, please hang in there. Dena's going to give us an interactive description of how you can contribute to Biodiversity Week and beyond.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. You all are my heroes, and I just really appreciate you so much. And building on what they all just said about being passionate and building community, that's, you know, iNaturalist is one way, one of many ways to do that, so we just thought we'd share about it. I just wanted to see how many folks here have used iNaturalist before? Okay, a lot of folks. How many of you have it on your phones? Okay, awesome. So just a little bit of background, just because it seems like half of us haven't maybe heard of it or used it before. It's also called iNat, just if you've heard people shorten it up. But iNaturalist is basically just a platform for you to discover the nature around you. Can kind of give a good introduction of what it was earlier. It's designed to both allow you to learn about what you're seeing and to document that information in perpetuity so it can be used for science and conservation. So it is an app that you can put on your phones, including your work phones. On our work phones here, we can download the iNat Classic app. There's also a newer version that just says iNaturalist. Either one works, but just know it might say Classic if you're downloading it onto your work phones. It also exists as a website where you can dig in deeper. You can look at information, you can download it, you can help identify what other folks have already seen out there. And there's actually already almost 4 million people that are using iNaturalist. I think I have one of the stats up on there. 4 million people around the world are already using it. So just imagine there's this amazing community of folks that are just like all of us, looking at nature, wondering what it is, posting pictures of it, and then helping each other identify what it can be. And what is really unique about iNaturalist that makes it different from Google Lens or Seek or some of these other, Seek actually works because it connects to iNaturalist, but there are a couple of other apps out there that are like, oh, use this to identify what you're seeing in nature, and that's fine. What iNaturalist says that's different is, so you're out there, you see something, you take a picture of it, and you push it through an AI that gives you a sense of what it is you're seeing. That's what pretty much all these different apps do right now. But the power of iNaturalist is that you then submit that observation, and that community of 4 million people have an opportunity to see it and verify it. So even though AI is really good, it's still not great. Humans do actually a better job of identifying nature. We have better expertise. than AI does right now. And so it's a way that people can then say, yes, this is it, or no, that's not, it's this. And sometimes there's a conversation going on. It's kind of like its own little social media, not social media, but like social platform for people to engage about nature. But then once it has been verified by a person, it becomes research grade and used for science and conservation. So that is the goal, is yes, use it to learn about what you're seeing, but use iNaturalist so you can push it out into the community and have it actually become research grade. There are over 500,000 species that have been documented in iNaturalist, which is the most number of species that have ever been documented in a single platform ever before, which is pretty amazing. And all of that information gets piped into the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, GBIF, which is used by the UN to make biodiversity decisions around the world. There is also an amazing collaboration happening between iNaturalist, sorry, my back is to you guys, iNaturalist, Cal Academy of Sciences, CDFW, to get that information to our state data repositories. And from there, we can update our species maps, our species occurrences, and then it can also be used for the 30 by 30 initiative to help inform where is biodiversity in our state and where should we be looking to protect it. It's also used for science around the world. There's something like, I wrote this down, 30,000 articles that have been published using iNaturalist recently that's discovering how species are moving, where they're going, how climate change is impacting them. It's helping, iNaturalist has been helping us rediscover species we thought were extinct. You know, someone just took a picture of a red cicada. They didn't know it at the time, but they saw something on a tree in their backyard, and it turned out it was what was thought to be extinct red cicada. And because of that, just the community that's out there, we're constantly looking at iNaturalist to seeing what people are going to find, and so it immediately was picked up by cicada experts, like who knew? And now all of a sudden you're a cicada expert too. So the idea is you do not have to be an expert to join or to participate, but it is a way for a community to really like put their power into science and conservation action at the end of the day. Okay, so I thought I'd do like a quick demo of, I'm not even really going to show it, it's mostly like if you have your phones and you have iNaturalist on it, or if you can, I think there's been, some of these slides have a little QR code, you can take a picture and scan it to get it downloaded. So the very first step is to get it on your phones. So you're going to want to download the iNaturalist app to your phone and sign up and create an account and sign in. Kim has a little QR code here you can scan if you need to get that onto your phones. You can also do all this you can sign up for an account on the website as well. So that's the first thing. I also mentioned there's unfortunately 2 different apps happening right now because iNat just put out an update to their version. So for folks who've had this app on their phones for the last few months, it's called iNaturalist Classic. The new one is just called iNat. They talk to each other. There's no need to like get confused or be worried about where your data is. They go straight to each other, but they just work in a little bit of different ways. But either way, once you have it on your phone and you're logged in, it's pretty simple. Both on the iNat Classic and on the regular iNaturalist account. I'm just going to open mine up right now. You should have, at the bottom of your screen, should be a little camera icon. So when you're outside, and I'm going to actually go outside and I can show anyone how to use this. You actually just click the camera, you take a picture of what you've seen, and then if you're using the new version, which most people usually are these days, what happens is it automatically tells you what it is that you're seeing, which is really cool. So the AI is working quickly, and then you just click submit and it's out there. Great. With the older version, it takes you to a details pane where you have to click, what did I see? And you run it through the AI. You make sure that your location is correct. And also you have to make sure that if it's a cultivated plant, like all the plants that's outside on the deck, so when we go outside, where we're practicing, we're gonna make sure we're marking it as cultivated. So that's in the classic version. It just comes up right for you before you can click submit. For those of you who have the newer version that like auto IDs it, you do have to go back. You don't have to do this, right? You could just see your observation, take a picture, submit it, and be on your way. You have contributed at the end. But to just make sure you have a good quality observation, I just recommend clicking on that picture and seeing what the details are in there. You can actually click the little pencil to edit it. You can make sure that it captured you in the right place, that your GPS was working that day. You can add more photos. So to make a really good observation in iNat, especially with plants, sometimes it's like take a picture of the flower, above it, below it, the stem, the whole plant. It's helpful for the humans who are looking at it to go through those things and make sure that what it says it is, it actually is. And that kind of information is what is really important to make this research grade What else? That's the main thing. And then you just click submit and it goes out there. And you can just walk away and feel really good about it. Kim mentioned, though, for California Biodiversity Day, it's on here right now, we're asking folks to join in the challenge to find 30 species. It's part of the 30 by 30 initiative. Try and find 30 wild species if possible, although planted stuff is okay as long as you mark it as cultivated. So the idea for this is you do have to join it to participate. So you can do that from the app if you just, there's actually, if you find there's a projects icon on the app. On the old one, it's on the far left. There's like a little box that says projects. On the new version, there's the 3 little lines on the right. You click it and then click projects. You can search for find 30. The word find 30, I think it pulls it up right away.
Find 30 and then click the one, because there's multiple years, just click the 2025.
Yeah, click 2025 and join. Once you do that, from anywhere in the state, starting from today until the end of Biodiversity Week, your observations count towards the challenge and your own self-challenge of if you can find 30 species. There's folks out there that are in it to win it, I think. There's some folks that are like, they're at 200, 300. Leah Gardner is our botanist at state parks. She said, I think I'm going to try and win it.
Can you make teams?
You could try. Yeah, it won't document you as a team, but you could go up against like someone who you know is really good and see who can get the better one. But I will tell you, our colleague at State Park, she is already like, I am going to do my best to get this thing. Yes. So bragging rights. But there is already someone out there who has like over 200 observations. So she's got a lot of work to do for the rest of this week. So we'd love it if you could join that. And then also, do we have time to go outside?
We do. Let's do the raffle first,
Yeah,
and then if anyone wants to go outside, I think Dena, you said you could stay an extra.
Yeah,
couple
I can
minutes
take
to
some
do
extra
outside.
time if folks want to poke around or ask questions. And yeah, thanks for participating.
Before we switch to raffle, one last cheers for everyone who presented. Okay.
All right, let's click the spin. Theo, do you want to do the first click?
Yeah.
And you can call out that person's
Oh, that's so
name.
exciting.
It's spinning, I can confirm. Look quick.
LeQuinn N.
LeQuinn! Come on up and pick your door prize. All right. So
When you have to act more excited than that.
surprise.
Haven't you seen Price is Right? You're supposed to like run out.
Oh, she's still here?
Jen?
She's not here anymore. Spin again.
Madeline and her sister made these bird feeders.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So you pick from these brains right here. Okay, 2 things. Oh, I have to get 2 things. Be here all day.
Amy B?
Amy B!
Thanks for letting us participate.
So you can make a hat and a bird feeder.
Oh, I already have it. All right, let me just take your name off this.
Keeps wanting to go to this.
This must be very good person. All right, spin.
Last one.
Kim A?
Kim Arbuckle. Oh, did she left? Did she left? She left.
She left.
All right, the person closest to Kim A is. Can you see that one?
Stephanie?
Stephanie.
Thank you all so much for joining today and all you do every day for biodiversity. Please stick around if you can. Dena's going to go outside and you can record some species on iNaturalist and find out if we have non-native plants on our roof. Thank you all so much for joining today.
Thank you.